Have you ever felt the unbearable agony of realizing that the person you cherished, the one you built a life with, was living an entirely different existence behind your back? That soul-crushing moment came crashing down on me the night I saw Jessica preparing herself, dressing up not for me, but for another man. For years, I had given her my unwavering loyalty, my trust, my heart. And in a single instant, it all shattered. As I watched her slip into black lace lingerie, her movements were deliberate, her expression filled with an excitement I hadn't seen in a long time. The woman I loved was not getting ready for a night with me. She was preparing herself for someone else. A surge of anger and helplessness consumed me, my breath catching in my throat. That moment marked the beginning of a new reality, one I had never imagined for myself. The foundation of everything I believed in crumbled, and I was left to pick up the broken pieces of a love that no longer existed. The night it all unraveled, I had asked Jessica where she was going. The hesitation in her eyes was fleeting, replaced almost instantly with feigned confidence. "Out with friends," she said, her voice smooth but lacking conviction. Did she really think I would believe she was dressing like that for a casual hangout? The tension in her face betrayed her words. She knew I saw through the lie, yet she stood her ground, refusing to acknowledge the truth that was already so painfully obvious. This wasn't the first time suspicion had crept into my mind. At a company dinner months before, I had noticed the way Mark Diamond, her boss, looked at her. His gaze lingered too long, his smile held a smugness that unsettled me. And when they danced together, he dared to glance at me, a silent challenge, a confirmation of what I had feared. Jessica had dismissed my concerns back then. "Mark is just a colleague," she had insisted, brushing off my unease. But the signs were all there. Her long work hours, the constant cancellations of our lunch plans, the way she had slowly withdrawn from me. I had been too blind, too trusting. Doubt gnawed at me, but I needed more than just suspicion. So I took action. One evening, while Jessica was out, I installed a hidden camera in our home. At first, everything appeared normal. She moved about as she always had, her routine unchanged. But then, one night when I was away on business, a notification popped up on my phone. My heart pounded as I played the recording. Jessica's voice, soft and intimate, whispered through the speaker. "Mark, can you come over tonight?" The world around me blurred. My hands trembled as I struggled to breathe. The reality of her betrayal slammed into me like a sledgehammer. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was real. It was undeniable. An hour later, I watched through the hidden camera feed as the doorbell rang. Mark stepped inside, his movements relaxed, confident, as if this had happened many times before. Jessica greeted him with a warm embrace, her lips pressing against his in a way that once belonged only to me. Rage boiled within me, a fire consuming every rational thought. My stomach twisted as I watched them disappear into our bedroom. That was the moment I knew there was no coming back from this. Our marriage was over, but I wouldn't let them walk away unscathed. Over the next 2 weeks, I observed, I listened, I waited. Every whisper, every stolen glance, every deceitful moment. I gathered them like fuel for the fire burning inside me. Then I set my plan into motion. I told Jessica I was leaving on another business trip, giving them the perfect opportunity to meet again. But this time, I wasn't going anywhere. I returned home, silent and unseen, armed with a baseball bat and a short-barreled shotgun. The rage inside me had festered into something uncontrollable. I moved through the house like a predator, my grip tightening around the bat as I approached our bedroom. And then I saw them. Jessica, wrapped in sheets that had once symbolized our love. Mark, relaxed, smug, as if he had won some twisted game. In that instant, I lost all restraint. With a force I didn't know I possessed, I swung the bat. The impact was brutal, sending Mark crashing to the floor, blood splattering across the walls. Jessica's screams ripped through the air, her voice shrill with terror. "Stop it! Stop it!" she cried, her hands trembling as she reached for me. But it was too late. Mark lay motionless, his face a gruesome mess of blood and agony. Jessica stood frozen, her wide, tear-filled eyes locked onto me. And in that moment, I realized nothing would ever be the same again. I calmly raised the shotgun, its cold steel weight steady in my hands as I pointed it at Jessica. Her breath hitched, eyes wide with fear and sorrow. I stared at her, my voice steady but laced with a finality that sent a shiver down her spine. "Tonight, Jessica," I said, "you will face the consequences of your actions. But I won't take your life. Instead, you'll live with this betrayal every single day for the rest of your days." Tears poured down her face, her expression twisted in regret, but I felt nothing. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just emptiness. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving both her and Mark behind, their world crumbling just as mine had that night. As I drove through the quiet, empty streets, a brief sense of relief washed over me, a whisper of justice in a world that had mocked my trust. But the feeling was fleeting. Something inside me remained unsettled, a hollow ache growing deeper with every passing moment. Revenge had been served, but it didn't bring the peace I had imagined. The next morning, a firm knock at my door shattered the silence. A wave of unease crawled up my spine before I even looked outside. Standing there, cold and expressionless, were two police officers. I already knew what had happened before they even spoke. Mark had survived. He had been hospitalized due to the injuries I inflicted, and Jessica, despite everything, had stayed by his side. But that wasn't the worst of it. Mark had gone to the police, filing a report that painted me as the aggressor, the violent husband who had snapped in a jealous rage. "Mr. Johnson, you're under arrest for assaulting your wife and Mark Diamond. Please come with us to the station," one of the officers said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. The weight of those words crushed me. Everything that had led up to this moment played in my mind like a film on repeat. Jessica's betrayal, my anger, the overwhelming thirst for revenge that had consumed me. And now, I was the one in handcuffs. At the station, I was given a copy of Jessica's statement. I read each word in stunned silence, my hands tightening around the paper. "My husband is crazy," she had written. "He attacked Mark and threatened me. I fear for my life." I could almost hear her voice saying those words, the same voice that once whispered love to me in the quiet of the night. Now, that voice was painting me as a monster. The depth of her betrayal cut deeper than any blade ever could. When the trial began, Jessica and Mark testified against me, their voices carrying the weight of their lies. But they underestimated me. With the help of my lawyer, I managed to escape jail time. I had evidence, proof of Jessica's affair, of her deceit. It was enough to weaken their case, enough to keep me out of prison. But some punishments don't come in the form of bars and chains. The real sentence was the way the world now saw me. Jessica and Mark made sure everyone knew their version of the story. Friends turned away, whispers followed me wherever I went, and strangers cast judgmental glances in my direction. I had become something else in their eyes. A man capable of violence, a man labeled as the villain in a story they only half understood. I lost my job. I lost my place in society. I lost everything. But karma, it seemed, had its own plans for Jessica and Mark. Jessica suffered the biggest setback of her life. Mark, the man she had chosen over me, abandoned her. Perhaps he realized she wasn't worth the cost. Perhaps he saw in her the same betrayal I once ignored. Whatever the reason, he left her to deal with the ruins of her own choices. Soon after, she lost her job. With no one left to stand by her, she became the town's outcast, the subject of hushed conversations and judgmental stares. The life she had built with deception crumbled beneath her feet. And then, just as suddenly as she had turned my world upside down, she disappeared. I never heard from her again, and I didn't care to reach out. Mark, on the other hand, tried to return to his normal life. But normal no longer welcomed him. His colleagues at work kept their distance. His reputation, once built on charm and success, rotted away under the weight of his actions. Eventually, the whispers grew louder, and the walls closed in around him. He, too, disappeared, vanishing from the city like a man trying to outrun his own past. But no one can outrun the consequences of their choices forever. One evening, as I sat alone in my house, a neighbor came to me with unexpected news. Someone had seen Jessica in another town, the same town where Mark had fled to. But the news didn't end there. Jessica was dead. They had found her lifeless body, and alongside her, Mark's. The whispers spoke of suicide. The weight of their actions, their guilt, their ruined lives had finally caught up to them. They had chosen the one escape they had left. The news hit me like a shockwave, rattling something deep inside me. I had sought revenge, had wanted them to suffer for what they had done to me. And now they were both gone. Their betrayal, their lies, their pain. It had all come full circle. I didn't know if I should feel relief or if the burden on my shoulders had just grown heavier. In the end, I had lost more than just Jessica. I had lost myself. What began as a love story had twisted into a nightmare of deceit, vengeance, and destruction. And in that story, there were no winners. Only lives broken beyond repair, left behind in the wake of choices that could never be undone.